Hey folks, Mr. Dell here. We are looking at solving equations. And so I'm pulling questions this is from CPM's course 2. And these are the closure questions, specifically closure question number 7-121. So it says, simplify and solve the following equations. So keep in mind, remember solving equations, you've got three steps, three main steps. Your first step is to simplify, because your goal when you're solving an equation is to figure out what x makes this true, right? I want to know what number, if I plug in the same number into both of those x's, I'd get a true equation. I'd get an equal equation. I'd get the same number, right? If I plug in 0 right now, 5 times 0. So if I put a 0 in, 5 times 0 is 0, 0 plus 2 is 2. So I'd get 2 here. If I plug a 0 in here, that becomes 0, and 0 minus 14 is negative 14. So 0 is not the right answer because 2 does not equal negative 14, right? So 0 is not it. So I got to figure out what number will make this true. So there's a process. The process is to make sure that you're doing opposite operations to isolate your x. Because if you can get it down to 1x, then you know what 1x is. So there's some algebra to isolate that x. So the first step is simplify. I'm going to write our steps here and I'll show you the process. And if I look, simplify just means, is there any combining like terms? Simplify each side. That's what I need to do. Simplify each side. And if I look at each side, there's no combining like terms. I can't do any simplifying. So that step is done for this question. The second step is to basically get x on one side and numbers, constants, on the other. Okay, that's to isolate the variable term. Isolate the variable term. So it's get all the x's on one side and the numbers on the other. So let's do that. What does that look like? Well, first of all, if I want x on one side, let's say I choose this side. I want all my x's to end up here. That means I got to get rid of them from over here on this side of the equation. So the opposite of negative 3 is positive 3. So a negative 3, positive 3 becomes a 0. So I got rid of it from that side, right? Well, if I do that, though, it's an equation. I've got to keep things balanced. I'm going to have to do the same thing over here. Add 3x on this side. So we end up with now 8x plus 2 equals negative 14. So I got x's. I got x away from this side. So now I want to get all the numbers on the other side. If I'm putting x on this side, I want the numbers over here. That means I got to get rid of them from here. So the opposite of plus 2 is minus 2. That gets rid of the numbers on this side. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So if you end up wanting to get all the numbers on one side, all the x's on the other side, that means you should eliminate them from the opposite sides. So now I have 8x equals negative 16. Negative 14 and negative 2 is negative 16. So that's step 2. Step 3 is always to divide by the coefficient. Okay, divide by the coefficient. That means the number that is being multiplied to the x, that's the coefficient. So if I divide by 8, that's my coefficient. 8 divided by 8 becomes a 1. 8 divided by 8 is 1, and that's what I want. I want to know what is 1x. But what I do to one side, I do to the other. So negative 16 divided by 8 is negative 2. So now I've got it. I figured out what my 1x is. X is negative 2. So if I put a negative 2 into this equation way back up in the beginning, I should have an equal statement, right? 2 times negative 2, 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. Negative 10 plus 8 is negative 10 plus 2 is negative 8. If I put a negative 2 into there, negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. 6 minus 14 is negative 8. So sure enough, putting a negative 2 in each of those x's makes it a true statement. That's why x is negative 2. Okay, so that's the process, and I explained it, took my time with that one, so I'm going to go a little quicker here. Same process for each question. So this one here, let's go ahead and get all my x's on one side. In this case, I'm gonna try to get my x's on this side, because if you notice, on over here on this side I have a 1x, and over here I have a 2/3 x. So there's more x's over here. So I want to keep things positive. So I'm going to subtract 2/3 from both sides. Okay. Oh, by the way, simplify each side. Didn't need to simplify because there was no simplifying to be done. So I skipped on to step 2. So I'm subtracting. So I now have 1 equals, right, this positive 1, because that becomes a 0. So it's just 1 is equal to what? Well, 1x minus 2/3 x is 1/3 x. So now I have 1/3 x minus 4. So I add 4 to both sides because I'm needing to keep my x's over here. So I have a 5 over here, and I have a 1/3 x now right there. So once again, I can look at this too, and I can think to myself, all right, 1/3 of something is 5. So that's what that x is. X is 1/3 of what? Well, if I know my fractions, I know how to manipulate fractions. 1/3 of 15 is 5. So that's why x is equal to 15. The other thing would be to divide by the coefficient, right? And I'm going to write it up here, rewrite it so I have more room. If this was the equation that this is the place I was at, and I was doing step 3, which is divide by the coefficient. The coefficient is 1/3. 1/3 divided by 1/3 is 1. That's where I'm getting this 1x. But when you divide by the coefficient here, 5 divided by 1/3, instead of division, remember when you divide by a fraction, you actually multiply by the reciprocal. When you divide, so it's divide is multiplying by the reciprocal, the flip-flop. So 5 over 1 times 3 over 1 is 15. That's where we get x equals 15. Okay. All right, let's keep going. So this one I do have to do step 1, simplify. On this side here, because I can combine like terms, right? I have 0.25x and minus a 1x. So 0.75 minus 1 is negative 0.25x. So I had to simplify those two first. Okay. Now I can get all my x's on one side. I'm going to try to get all x's over here. So that would mean to do the opposite, which is add 0.25x. That makes that as a 0. Add 0.25x. When I do that, so I have 0.5 plus 0.25 makes it 0.75x minus 0.5 is equal to 1. Okay. And then this time I'm going to add 0.5 because I want to get all my numbers over here. So I get rid of them from this side. So if I'm adding 0.5, so far I have now that disappears. So I have 0.75x equals 1.5. 1 plus 0.5 is 1.5. So 0.75 times something equals 1.5. I look at money. I think, 75 cents times what is $1.50? Oh, well, it's times 2. X has to equal 2. Or again, you could divide by the coefficient. That's step 3. Divide 1.5 by 0.75, and you'd still end up with 2. All right, last question. Simplify. I do have some simplifying here. If I see I've got combined like terms, I get 3x. 5x minus 2x is 3x. So 3x plus 6 is equal to 3x minus 7. Now, let me pause there, because if I look, I have the same amount of x's on both sides, 3x and 3x. If I went ahead and got x on one side and subtracted 3x from both sides, they'd all be zeros, right? So what I'm asking is, again, I'm looking for what? I'm looking for the number that makes this true. So 3 times the same number on this side plus 6, on this side minus 7. So when would there be a situation where I would multiply by 3 and add 6 or subtract 7 and get the same thing? It's impossible, right? That's never going to happen. So in this case, I could stop there because I notice there's no way to solve this. X, I would say, has no solution. There's no solution for X. There's no way to solve this problem. There's no answer. There's nothing that's going to make this equation true. These will never be equal. 3x plus 6 will never equal 3x minus 7. Okay, there we go.